Hang in there, it is!
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to The Smylie Show. And Smylie, we are officially entering a major week. Third major week of the season, U.S. Open at Oakmont. We have a little bit of a light preview today, some of your own experience playing there. We're going to dig into it a little further as we ramp up this week, and then of course doing journals on site. And it could be an interesting name that's etched on the trophy here when it's all said and done. We had Rory and Scotty to start the year, but we're going to look at some stats a little later that could be the stats say first-time winners are popular here at Oakmont.
Well, very well could be true. And I don't know about that. I'm feeling pretty good about a certain amount of players, but hey, I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but I got a couple guys in mind that I think are going to have great weeks.
That's functions as a nice tease for the full preview show we're going to drop for you on Wednesday with our picks, our DFS lineup, the whole 9 yards, just going through the top of the odds board. Looking forward to that, doing that from Pittsburgh. Before we get to the U.S. Open, we have a thriller. Well, thriller is probably a strong word to use here. We had a playoff finish. They definitely played more holes than just 72 holes. Whether or not it was thrilling to you just depends on if you're one of the New Zealand men's football team that was watching Ryan Fox get this thing finished off.
Yeah, that was kind of an odd storyline to the whole thing, right?
And also someone who's a light Premier League nerd of sorts. And I was watching this part without full volume, but I found it odd they weren't interviewing Chris Wood, who was standing behind the guy they were interviewing, because Chris Wood scored like a zillion goals a season for Nottingham Forest and is like by far the best New Zealand men's player, but he would just kind of stand and hanging out. I was like, talk to Chris Wood. Someone talk to Chris Wood. And that is not who they chose to talk to. So
I did not know who any of the guys were. So I'm glad somebody did.
Yes. Yeah. That was, I'm like right in the middle of this very tiny Venn diagram, Ryan Fox and New Zealand football. But yes, we have to head up to recap the RBC Canadian Open. And we're going to do that, Smylie, with the help of our good friends at Shipsticks. And this is a perfect segue here as well, because international shipping, traveling with clubs internationally. I mean, we've heard the horror stories of like the graveyard of clubs in Scotland and Edinburgh Airport, things like that. If you were headed up to Canada to play TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, this Shipsticks would be a good method for getting your clubs there. Shipsticks gets you from your front door to 4 easier than ever. They'll pick up your golf clubs from your home or office and deliver them on time, guaranteed to your golf destination anywhere in and outside the U.S. No more airport headaches, no more lugging heavy bags, just easy, stress-free travel for golfers like you. Smylie, have you ever played in Canada before?
Oh yeah, played RBC Canadian a bunch.
Was it? Do you have a fond memory to a certain course there? Or,
Well, it used to always be at Glen Abbey. That was, of course, the famous shot that Tiger Woods hit on 18 out of that fairway bunker.
That's right.
I loved that layout, to be honest. And played, God, it was always in Toronto or around Toronto when I played it. And I really enjoyed the golf course in which Nick Taylor won on. I don't remember the names of any of these courses, and I wish I did. So sorry, all the Canadian listeners and watchers right now. But I really enjoyed that golf course. Besides the 18th hole, the 18th hole wasn't good. But speaking of 18 holes, that wasn't very good. TPC Toronto, the 18th didn't necessarily deliver, although you must have to attribute that to a heavy wind that was back into the player's face, and unfortunately led to as you said, it was maybe a thriller from a category standpoint on Rotten Tomatoes and how they rate the movie.
That's right.
You would have had to gone down with your audience score for the overall what we watched, I should say.
This audience score was, you were watching because you had to, not because you necessarily wanted to, at least after the first 3 playoff holes. But if we just to finish up on Shipsticks, supporting benefits include white glove service, complimentary insurance, real-time tracking, door-to-door service, international shipping, in the event that you're going to TPC Toronto, and it's for any occasion. It's perfect for buddies trips, business trips, even family vacations where managing kids, strollers, and extra luggage can ruin your vacation before it's even begun. Enjoy 20% off your next shipment by using the promo code SMYLIE, that's SMYLIE, or using the link that we will put in the YouTube description for this episode. So you mentioned it there. We did 3. This is a par 5, and it was it felt like everyone had this weird tweener distance, and the way that wind was playing tricks on people. It was, I mean, we saw Cam Young there in the fairway at 18 hit a 200, or I'm sorry, the ball speed on the fairway wood he hit on his approach shot at 18 was 177 miles per hour, which is just like brain exploding for a guy who's not even, I mean, there are guys that would like that to have that as their driver ball speed, let alone a fairway wood off the deck. But he got a gust of wind. It seemed like everyone was kind of sitting over wondering whether or not they should go for it, lay up, and try to just wedge it in there tight. We saw Sam Burns do the latter on his first 3 playoff holes, made par every single time. And then the fourth rendition of this playoff hole, Ryan Fox hits one tight. Sam hits one a little further towards the original pin location. And then unfortunately 3 putts from there and gives it to Ryan Fox. What do you, just watching this thing, hoping for a little more fireworks? I know Sam Burns was your pick, but you mentioned Ryan Fox. So you were all over the board today. A little pat on the back
and
for you,
Cam Young. And Cam Young. Yes, I was 3 guys in the top 5. So it was a good week as far as predicting players to play well. And yes, the Cam Young thing, he was very close to, he flushed 2 shots there for a second there. Kind of felt like he was going to be a part of the mix in this playoff. Foxy had some short misses late in regulation. Sam was on fire on the back 9 with the 29. But the playoff was super interesting. The fact that after first, Sam, you give him a 5-footer up the hill and a right edge putt, he's maybe missing that 1 out of 10 times. To me, it looked like it bounced a little bit. Kind of once it bounces, it stops breaking in that initial bit, and that's exactly what happened. So it just kind of it took the break late, and you don't see Sam get fooled much, and he probably didn't even know it hobbled a little bit. But the kind of the slow mo cam, you kind of see it a little bit. And then some poor putts. You gotta have to mention Ryan Fox leaving a 10-footer short for the win. Not only short, but 2 feet short. So that's being added to this. And then and all of this, like, we're all screaming at the top of our lungs, move the tees up so like the players can go for it. I did get an answer of why they couldn't. It would have changed shot length. So shot length was set for the day at 18. So it would have screwed up shot length. And I could have made an argument that at that point, you probably could have just used rangefinder for yardages anyways. You could have called in the numbers, walked them off for the graphics. If I'm not sure if maybe in the playoff and like how the tours, like if you're going to look on the PGA Tour app, that would have screwed it all up. Probably if you're looking on your phone and on the playoff and seeing that, oh, he hit it here, or they played a tee up, it would have probably skewed the app and all that. But yeah, we were screaming for that. So after that second playoff hole, and they said, yes, we're going to change the hole location, which is, I mean, we've never seen that before.
Well, the one last time we've seen it, and this was funny because it
was Travelers, right?
It was Travelers when the protester ran on the green. And I looked away for a quick second because I'm here, with the family trying to get everyone settled tonight before I head off for a week to Oakmont. And I looked back and they were recutting the hole. And it occurred to me, I was like, wait a second. This was a similar time of year. Did we get another protest that broke up a playoff on a PGA Tour event and then realizing, no, wait, that was Travelers, this is Canadian. And then, subsequently, the way they were talking about it was we're just trying to do a different hole location. But I'd never seen that prior to this, and definitely not just from a competitive perspective. It was like we were forced to by something physically happening to the hole or the green where we couldn't place pin location anymore.
Well, I think it quickly changed from advantage Sam Burns on that left hole location to, I felt like it had more of an advantage for Ryan Fox. The reason why, and you saw it happen with some of the wedge shots that you saw from Sam Burns, his miss typically is kind of late and out to the right. That's kind of what I've watched from him over the years. When he's got it dialed in, I mean, those iron shots that he was hitting, the layups were incredible. Not that we're trying to celebrate the layups, but those were striped, flighted 4-irons and stuff. And then once you move that whole location to a false front, short and right, I think that's when it becomes a little bit more of a control game as far as spin goes. And Sam had one shot that from 75 yards that you could tell his arms were late. Trevor was right on it with the call, just not quite synced up. And I felt like with the left hole location, you had the room to the right. So a player like himself who at times would be a little late, he would be okay, and he'd still have a 10 to 15 footer. But when it happened there on that third time, when they moved the whole location at front right, it spins off the green, and next thing you know, he's got has to get up and down, which he does. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the fourth playoff hole.
The fourth hole, and it's now. Would you have changed? Hindsight's 2020. Would you have played it any differently if you're Sam Burns the first 3 times you played in terms of trying to roll the dice, go for the green?
Oh no! I mean, it was
you like the layup and a wedge every time,
100%.
Even with the different location. Yeah,
I loved the way he played the hole every single time. I would have argued maybe on the third time when they moved the whole location to that front right, I would have said maybe lay it up down the left side for maybe a little better angle to where he would have maybe been able to play a little bit more of a shot that's left of the whole location that wouldn't be spinning off the green like it ended up having to do from the right. That would have been my only way I would have changed from a strategy standpoint, but you got to give a ton of credit in that fourth hole to Ryan Fox. I mean, that is not an easy shot. It's later in the day. It's cool wind he's got to deal with, a very small landing area, and he hit the shot of the tournament. But I think the big shock was in Colt and Trevor got it right. You can't expect, or you almost have in that position that Sam was in, you can't expect for Ryan Fox to make the putt. Just if you make the putt, great if you're Sam, but you got to make sure that first off, you're inside of Ryan Fox's putt, his next putt. Instead, he didn't lose his turn and had an 8-footer and hit a good putt, whipped it out, and the whole thing was gift wrapped to Ryan Fox after that.
Ryan Fox's second one on tour this season, of course, won an opposite field event, as you noted earlier this year. And a guy that we saw graduate via that top 10 DP World Tour program a couple of years ago, is a guy who's been in and around some President's Cup teams, has the talent, but hadn't really broken through really till this year. I mean, I think this is a significant win for him, and he always been in and around the top 100, top 50 this year, heading into the week, 75th in the world, 71st in the Data Golf ranking. But I mean, what does this do for you in terms of the way you view Ryan Fox's, the rest of the season here on tour and just career trajectory in general?
Well, how old's Ryan Fox?
38 years old.
Well, he's a little older, but he still hits it far enough.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an advantage to him. But he's set up now with house money, knowing that he's got status. There's nothing to worry about with 2 tour wins this season. Now can continue to play aggressively, and that's when you see a lot of guys start to really win in bunches, is when they don't have tour status to worry about.
Yeah. And then Sam is a guy that, and they noted this on the broadcast, he's really starting to find some form again. We've had conversations about, him this year as a guy that may be on the outside looking in when it comes to captain's picks time for the Ryder Cup. But, we're looking at a T13 RBC Heritage, a T5, the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, T30 at Truist, T19 at the PGA, a T12 at the Memorial. And now this week, enters the playoff, tied for first, and loses to Ryan Fox. But
it's pretty good run, dude.
It's a really good run. And I wonder, if this is kind of foretelling for maybe another win this season, maybe a top 5, top 10 at the U.S. Open, something that would vault him back in contention for the Ryder Cup, or maybe even someone who with a win at a big event could qualify on points alone.
Yeah, what was he coming into the week in the Ryder Cup stuff?
The last time I remember checking, he was like in the 20s or 30s. And let me just check that while we talk about it.
Yeah, so we had talked a lot about players like Sam, Jordan Spieth, let's throw in Tony Finau, Brooks Koepka, players that have been on these teams year in and year out with a need to play well and really win a golf tournament kind of leading into the end of the year. And this was the perfect opportunity for Sam. He makes that putt on the first playoff hole. And I think you and I are both saying, well, where's he stand for the Ryder Cup? It feels like that may be enough to play his way onto the team. And after, I think we forget he shoots 62 on Sunday, which is incredible,
yes.
It definitely leaves like more of a sour taste in your mouth. You just wanted him to win that if you're maybe Captain Keegan, but I don't know what it's all going to come down to. Whether it's the difference between Sam winning this golf tournament or not probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference in the eyes of Keegan. It's just going to come down to the points at the end of the year, the matchups that he has, and all the data that he has to work with. But lucky enough for Sam, he's got partners that he can play with. And that's always a good thing to have, especially if you're Sam and Jordan, knowing that if you're wondering how they're going to do in the team room, they've proven that they can be successful.
So those are the guys that obviously made the playoff, were in and around it, had a chance to win the tournament. Some notable names earlier in the week that not only were not in contention, but did not make the cut that are worth going over now as we head into the third major of the season. So Smylie, going back a little earlier in the week, there's no good way to sugarcoat this. I can't think of a more deflating scenario from the perspective of an equipment manufacturer than having probably your most recognizable, at least one of two most recognizable players playing your clubs, and maybe the greatest driver of the ball in the history of the sport, using your old driver all year long with great success. In fact, winning a major with that driver, completing the career Grand Slam with that driver, and being very married to that driver. Finally getting him to change into the new driver this week, making a big deal out of that, posting things on social media. And then you get to the week, which is supposed to be a tune-up for him to go and play great in the U.S. Open. He gets the two-way misses on Friday. He was, I believe, 147th in the field in strokes gained off the tee. A forgettable week for Rory, misses the cut by a wide margin. Just this week in general, and I'm not assigning blame to the driver head itself. It could be something different. I'm just wondering what you make of this experiment this week of a driver that was supposed to be able to help him get the ball more in play and potentially a weapon at Oakmont where fairway, tee accuracy is going to be at a premium, and how this kind of, I don't know if blew up in his face is the right way to say it, but just this is not the way they wanted to go. Rory McIlroy and TaylorMade this week.
Oh, this didn't just happen overnight. I think he's been kind of struggling with his swing a little bit, really ever since the Masters. Of course, Zurich, I'm not really sure exactly how he hit it that week. I'm sure he hit it fine. But Truist, if you were with us when we did the recap after that, I told you guys he's off right now. And I felt like PGA was a place where he would easily be able to go out and find it, because guess what? He's driven it really well there, and it kind of suits his game perfectly. But the stats that week weren't great either. Drove it poorly. Approach game was not very good. And so that was his last start before this week at RBC Canadian Open, because he didn't play Memorial. And this is a golf course that you would think would be perfect for his game. Everything's right in front of you, a place where it really is helpful to have length. And you said it, two-way miss. The stats were familiar to me. It actually kind of looks like some of mine back when I used to play, but we don't see that from Rory McIlroy. We don't see him, like you said, being, he's one of the best drivers I've ever seen in my life. And to see him lose that many strokes, he's, that it sets up his whole game. And when you can't find fairways, you're struggling with what maybe the ball flight of the driver's producing and what your swing is kind of producing, kind of puts you in a weird spot. And I think Rory too, during, really over the last 5 or 6 years, and this isn't unusual too, a lot of players have feels with their irons and feels with their drivers. As far as just a general swing thought, with the driver, Rory McIlroy hits up on the golf ball a bunch, but with an iron, you're hitting, more down on the golf ball. So sometimes setup and just general swing feels could feel very different. And Roy's talked about that over the last couple of years, how he's got this really good feel with his driver and he's driving it great, but that same feel isn't great for his iron game. And I think where we've seen him kind of figure it out and put it all together is when he's able to have that same driver feel where he's able to just rip it and find a bunch of fairways. And then with his iron game, try to hit a lot more 3/4 shots. And that's kind of how he marries everything. And that's where I felt like beginning of this year, where he really took that next step, is that he was still driving it very long and straight and high. And then that iron game, he was just able to, hit those 3/4 shots.
Which driver do you think we see at Oakmont? Do you think he goes back to the QI10, or do you think he stays with this QI35 after a pretty train wreck day on Friday?
Probably the high bore. I think we're going to head back to the high bore.
I would love nothing more. Can you imagine just Rory walking up to the first tee at Oakmont with the Cleveland high bore, just waking up the echoes of VJ saying? That'd be absolutely
100%. What do I think? I don't know.
Yeah,
they put out so many dang driver heads every year. I can't keep up with the with the new heads that these companies come out with every single year. I'm playing a model that's like 4 years old. So it's for me, I just can't keep up with the times, and nor do I have the time to go get fit for a new driver every single season.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think that is something that Rory himself has said throughout the year, in some ways questioning the manufacturing cycle that these OEMs, seem married to, where why do we need to put out a new driver head every single year, especially when the previous one, the numbers are going to be close to identical to the one that was last year. And obviously to some degree it's marketing something new. It's that these sort of equipment rollouts are mapped out, 3 to 5 years in advance of, and a lot of them, you'll notice are sort of cyclical in nature. It's, this QI35 that TaylorMade has out this year mimics some of like the Sim 2, like the matte look of that driver. And so it's like these things are happening for a reason. But I think it's interesting to hear a guy like Rory McIlroy, who is a face of a brand where they're trying to market you clubs, saying, why do we keep doing this at this rate? And especially for a guy that's really trying to get dialed in with the driver and have it work for him over the course of a season, you can understand why, even if it's light pressure, the pressure to play the new thing as part of the contract could get frustrating. So it's interesting.
Well, I think let's just look at the car market as an example. I'm sure if you talk to a car salesman, you'd say, hey, what's different between this 2025 model and the 24 model? They would tell you what's different, but really when they're in the office with their car salesman mates, they're saying, you know what, there's nothing different. There's always somebody that's going to be in the market as a consumer that wants to buy the new thing that they can say, hey, I bought this. This is the one that blah, blah is playing. And that's just part of it. It's part of being a professional golfer and why they pay them a lot of money to play these new heads. It's because they want to sell the new best thing to the consumer that's in the market to buy something that's new. So it's not unusual because you can look at a ton of markets that are exactly the same, just like it. But whether it's good for the professional player long term, that's understandably a debatable thing, because I think of players that would love to be in a 5-wood that they had 10 years ago. And you see players that have these clubs that they don't ever get away from, whether it's a wedge design from 6 generations ago that they're like, well, you haven't made anything better than this. So I'm just going to keep playing this.
Like I remember when Scotty kind of really burst onto the scene, it took him forever for TaylorMade to get him out of the old Nike 3-wood and into the new TaylorMade 3-wood because that 3-wood was just a rocket. Nike as well with the driving irons that Tony Finau and Brooks Koepka, I believe, still play, where you get these cult classics that get stuck there for a long time. I'm sure with Cleveland and Srixon, there are a lot of those drivers, and Srixon's an exceptionally popular driving iron. In fact, a lot of guys who have club deals that aren't obviously 14 club deals, that's the one manufacturer they choose to put in their bag because it's such a trusty club. So all that's interesting to me, but I wonder if some of it too comes down to cosmetics, and that's where I think I get frustrated potentially as a pro, is if it's the same tech, but one person likes a shiny finish on the driver head, another likes a matte finish. One person likes a certain type of laminate, another likes a different one, where, the pros being, nudged towards playing the newest version of it so they can sell more of those. But in reality, it's very similar in terms of tech. And it's, what do I feel most comfortable looking down at if I'm trying to hit a compact golf shot?
Well, you hope when the new stuff comes out, when you look down at it, that it looks good. And there's going to be a lot of different prototype type of heads that they can always figure it out to get something to make it look decent to your eye. But the tug and pull relationship is what happens between what the player signs in their contract and the OEMs of what it says in the fine print, which is player is responsible for playing the new technology every single year. And so when you look at that fine print, I'm sure that's where the OEMs are like, hey, we need to get this player into this, where I think other manufacturers, I'm not saying TaylorMade holds gunpoint to these players that hey, you have to be in this. But I'm just telling you from my experience as a player that you're always trying to have your agent say, hey, can we just kind of work our way into getting this new head in? It's definitely not a there's a bit of a gray area. Is all I'm trying to say.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I guess you shed some light on that. I don't know if there's any additional information that people would be interested in, but just that sort of, there is almost a negotiation within a negotiation, right? Or that's what it seems like.
Well,
here's a contract and how much
what
space
you sign.
Right,
technically, like the OEMs are going to be like, well, we would like you to get into this. And as long as you're making a concerned effort to put this into your bag, that, whether it's, having a fitter come to you and working with it on the golf course, just making an attempt to try to get it in your bag, I think that helps. But I think any of the executives or any of the high end people with these OEMs, I would say that they would prefer if the player's winning golf tournaments, regardless. But I think it's definitely like the step below that is, can we still keep working and trying to get this head in? Because I guarantee you, with the beginning of the year that Rory had, which was incredible. I mean, I think we got to go back and even talk about it. Winning the Masters, winning the Players Championship, winning at Pebble Beach.
AT&T, yeah.
What a start. Like they're like, yes, we would love to get this head in, but we want Rory McIlroy winning golf tournaments more importantly.
Well, and I think also the other thing to talk about it is what happens when it backfires like it did this week. It's one thing to say, hey, we'd really like to have Rory in the newest head, but the worst case scenario is when you finally do get him in the new head and you post on social media about it and do all this stuff, and then he plays exceptionally poorly. Now, not only is it neutral PR, it's negative PR.
To be fair, it's a fair bet. You're kind of always think that Rory's going to play good. So this is the one time it's backfired. I read a stat that this was his second worst strokes gained performance in his career. That's alarming. You've kind of heard him talk about just his general motivation, that it's hard for him to go sit on the range for 3 to 4 hours. So there's definitely a bit of a hangover from winning the Masters, of trying to find the motivation, resetting goals. And, I think we all expected right after is that, and we maybe take this a little bit for granted with Scotty, is that after he wins a golf tournament, he's on to the next and he wants to win the next one. And I think when Rory's had this mountain that he's just trying to peek over the top of, and he's come so close and fallen on his face so many times, that it's understandable, the human element of finally achieving something. It's been difficult for him to kind of reset a little bit, especially when it's been a little bit off. So he's got some work to do heading into, I think, one of the more challenging golf courses in the world.
Here is a direction I want to take this next that I find really interesting. So we've been keeping tabs on this for the last couple of months since Rory won the Masters to complete his career Grand Slam. It's just, we were looking, I believe it was in Augusta, Georgia, at the odds for outright winners of the major championships for the remaining 3 on the calendar that year. And we're going to do that with some help from our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. For this week only, new customers can bet just $5 and win $300 in bonus bets if your bet hits. And so I don't know who you're going to put your money on this week, what the safest bet is here, but I do know this, Smylie. If you're looking at outright odds, where do you think we were talking about Scotty and Rory? They were in like the 4-1, 5-1 ish range for all these majors, for by and large, maybe a little bit higher or lower depending on the venue. Where do you think Scotty and Rory are now outright to win at Oakmont, the U.S. Open?
I do not know the answer to this, but I'm going to give you my best guess. They were both around that plus 450-ish range after the Masters when we were talking about the U.S. Open odds. I would imagine Scotty's have creeped down, especially 4 out of 5, and then coming off of a win at Memorial. I would say that he's probably creeped down to plus 375, and then I'm going to say that Rory McIlroy's probably creeped up to, gosh, if he was around plus 500, I would say that he's probably around plus 800 now.
You're getting really good at this game, Smylie. Plus 275 for Scotty Scheffler to win, and plus 850 for Rory McIlroy. So it just goes to show, at least in the handicapper's mind. And again, thanks to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook for teeing that up. And by the way, you can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code Smylie Show. That's code SMYLIESHOW for new customers to score $300 in bonus bets when you win your $5 bet. Only on DraftKings. DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario, bet must win to receive reward, minimum minus 5,000 odds required. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. It's another disclaimer week, Smylie. How did I do, by the way?
I thought you were just going to do like a short version of it, and then once you got closer to Boot Hill Casino, that's when I knew we were all the way.
That's it. Once you get to Boot Hill, there's no going back. We're going all the way to Kansas.
Thanks for sticking with us, folks.
I mean, at least it's somewhat entertaining to see if I can make it through that read.
That was actually really good. Well done.
I'll say, like, if that's the tone we're setting this week, we might just throw the recorded disclaimer out the window. I think I'm gonna have a handle on it. Although I'm gonna ask you to do it too. It's only fair to give us both a shot at it.
It's fair. That is fair. I definitely want to give it a bat.
But those are the DraftKings Sportsbook odds, and the separation, I think, is pretty stark there between two guys we felt like we're going to rule the golf landscape for the rest of the season. And no matter which driver Rory shows up with at Oakmont, I mean, you said it since the truest, that we're just a little concerned about where he's at off the tee. You know, this feels like one of the worst possible things you could have for a get right week at a major. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. You don't want to be coming into Oakmont looking for accuracy, because hitting the fairway is going to be so important. And for Rory, like I said earlier, it sets up his game when he's driving it good. These mammoth of par fours that they're going to have out here at this golf course become much more manageable. What will be helpful is that there is some rain in the forecast, and they've had a bunch of rain to this point. From my sources on the ground, outside the ropes, it's a slosh pit, mud pit. So make sure you're not bringing a pretty white shoes over to Oakmont this week. It's going to be. It's going to be a bit of an issue.
Have you kept tabs on my social media? This is such a self-serving question I'm asking. Have you kept tabs?
No, maybe not.
We're debuting rain shorts this week. Have you seen these rain shorts that I've made?
No.
Oh, this is one of the better decisions I've ever made in my entire life. Sorry to detour our US Open preview, but I had a pair of rain pants that Hope Valley gave us as a tea gift that I'd used never in my entire life. And prior to our tournament last week, and I was thinking, I cut them. I cut them, and you know what? I love the early returns. We had a couple like light showers that passed through, and I had a little rain vest on, the rain shorts, and they were just the right sort of fabric to keep me breathing, but also keep the rain off the shorts that eventually, when the rain passed, take them right off and we're still dry. So then I took them to the tailor. Shout out to the good people at Triangle Tailors, got me all hemmed up, and I'm going to bring them to Oakmont this week. I'm hoping to get a professional debut for the rain shorts.
You're not wearing those at Oakmont, are you?
I very much want to and plan on it. Are you alarmed by that?
I don't think it's going to rain while we're there.
Well, it better, because I'm bringing the rain shorts. I mean, I'm actually kind of hoping for rain.
Are they the stretchy ones too?
Yeah, stretchy waistband. Just think of like a classic, the classic black rain pant that we all wear with the little bottoms. And I just chopped them down to about a 5.5, 6 inch inseam.
I don't even want the khakis underneath. I think you just go
just commando.
No, I would prefer if we did not go commando. I would prefer if we could wear some undergarments.
I'll bring them on the trip. I'm going to show them to you. I'm very proud of them. They turned out great. Anyway, that's all by way of saying the rain has moved out of the forecast largely, which is a little upsetting to someone who's looking to debut rain shorts. But that having been said, Smylie, so soft helps the score, right? Like I think it was a preview on Golfer's Journal. What?
Well, I'll say that. I mean, it rained very hard in the lead up of 2016, and I found it to be still very difficult. Yes.
And we will get there soon. I think it was a Golfer's Journal piece where they had longtime Oakmont pro Bob Ford on, and he was saying if it's wet, winning score should be about 5 under. If it's dry, 5 over. And so that's a huge disparity.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I don't think it's going to get that. I think somewhere around even is probably where we're going to net out.
Let's go ahead and move over to Oakmont because we want to devote some time in this episode to do, as we have for past majors, a little bit of a light preview heading into the week. And of course, when we are on site, we're going to give you the preview, the one and done picks, looking at all the favorites. Smylie will have walked the course by then. But in today's episode, we're excited to bring some memories of Oakmont because Smylie played in this event last in 2016. So we're excited to get into that. Look at this, the 2016 Oakmont Yardage book. I cannot wait to dive in. Let me give you just a brief kind of tee up for this and source. What are we laughing at here?
I just found this. I apparently wrote notes down like as swing thoughts before the round.
What do you have in there? What do you have in there to start?
It says posture, good rhythm with hips, space on downswing. And then it says bad, left and in toes, and then fix. I guess the fix for that would be the posture needs to be more in the heels, slower on the backswing, and get behind, aim righted. I don't know what that means. Maybe I aim too far right. But hey, good to see this led me to a miscut, these notes.
Yeah, I mean, it was worth a try. I feel like most of those are pretty good golf adages. So, it's something to take away for the week.
I shot 77-76. I thought I shot 77-73. So missed the cut by good margin.
Well, but there were some highlights in there that I'm excited to get into. Okay, but first, let's just give you a table set for Oakmont itself. All right. And I also have to credit, I sourced much of this preview from both Friday Golf and Jeff Shackelford's Quadrilateral newsletter, both worth a deep dive. You're trying to kind of get dialed in for everything that Oakmont's going to present this week. This course originally opened in 1904. It's the only course Henry Phones ever designed. And Henry, along with his son William, they quite literally tried to make this the hardest golf course possible. They were playing at a neighboring club, was not hard enough. They had the idea of let's just make a really, really, really challenging, demanding golf course. That's how Oakmont was birthed. So really perfect for an U.S. Open test. Of course, Oakmont famous for the church pew bunkers, which originally were raked in furrowed fashion. Essentially, that means like almost I gotcha. You like the bonsai gardens where you have these like kind of little triangles where there are these like indentations. They'd use these 50-pound rakes to rake these to make it nearly impossible to get out of these bunkers. And the 1953 U.S. Open was nearly boycotted over the furrows. And there was like some sort of compromise where fairway bunkers were not raked in furrowed fashion. Greenside were. None of the bunkers today are ranked furrowed. Thank goodness, because that would be a huge, I don't know that anyone would play that. We might have another boycott. But that's to kind of give you the setting for the course. And then this is more from Jeff Shackelford at the Quadrilateral. The winning scores to par in Oakmont's 9 previous U.S. Open, 13 over, 11 over, 5 under, 1 under, 5 under, 4 under, 5 under, 5 over, and most recently 2016 4 under for Dustin Johnson. Oakmont's hosted 13 professional majors, 9 U.S. Opens, and 3 PGA championships. They have the 2033, 2042, and 2049 U.S. Open.
Wow.
And how about 7 of 9 U.S. Open winners at Oakmont also won their first major that week? So because you're a first-time winner this week, might be something to factor into our picks.
I think they're all like Hall of Famers too, the guys that have won there.
Yeah. Hogan won in 53. There are a lot of great names who have won this course, and it's a demanding major test. So Smylie, we teased it a little bit. 2016 U.S. Open. We're going to present this with the help of our friends at Ahead, and today we are stitching it all together. Ahead takes a cross-domain approach to solving complex problems, integrating solutions across the technology stack, and bridging the old with the new, which is what we're doing right now. The 2016, bridging it into 2025. Ahead relies on its heritage of modernizing legacy infrastructure to blend with cloud-native skills. You can learn more at ahead.com. Smylie, 2016. You mentioned you missed the cut. That's not where I want to begin. Here's where I want to begin. They've talked about this par 3 8th hole, this monster that can stretch out to 300 plus yards. I believe when you played it in 2016, it was 288. Bogey on Thursday, but birdie on Friday. What do you remember about the bird at 8 on Friday?
I just looked that up. I have no idea. They just
blacked out.
No idea how I made birdie. I must hit on the green and made a putt. But didn't go too well after that.
Well, so just take us through, because you're in the unique position, especially in the golf media world, of having played this course in its most recent U.S. Open form.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about the week and just every detail? As we're trying to kind of paint a picture here. What was it like staying in the area, who you played practice rounds with, what it was like being on property? We wanted to dig into all of it.
Well, it's just a classic U.S. Open venue. The golf course is so hard. And when you hear it all week, when I think it's going to be talked about, it's not over exaggerated. It really is that challenging and just beautiful architecture. And I can't imagine being a one-time architect and building this place. Just first off, just job well done.
Shout out to the phones. Henry and William. Really, really good work, guys.
The amount of times I try to build something as a parent for my kid, and it takes me multiple times to build it and get it right. And that's kind of Oakmont. It's constantly being changed and tweaked and renovated. It's kind of the history of the place, is that it never stops changing. I think it's the beauty of this place. The golf course just fits the land. And a lot of places too. I was reading something that, when architects typically get to places, they try to level this place, level places out. But this golf course, the greens are just fit to the terrain just so nicely.
Well, and it's interesting, because that was another part of the previews that I was reading about this that I found really interesting, is that, so this was obviously originally a piece of Pennsylvania farmland. And because it was constructed, early 1900s, there wasn't a ton of flattening that happened here. It's kind of, the property rolls, and you have these holes that kind of play diagonally along these slopes where, hitting both hitting your spot in terms of your target out the tee, but also knowing what the ball is going to do once it's on the ground are both of great importance.
And there's a highway in between.
The Pennsylvania Turnpike right through. Here is, I found this so interesting. This is from Fried Egg Golf, Cameron Hurtis and Garrett Morrison. So shortly after William Fone's death in 1950, the club began a beautification initiative where they planted over 5,000 trees, which completely changed the original layout of the property, where there were no trees at all. And the Fones, really the goal was to create like a Scottish style, like a British links style course, where it was open. And so this beautification project, it segmented the course into these narrow corridors, and turf conditions decline.
Go look at Johnny Miller 63 and you could see all the trees.
So then in the 90s, they decided to start removing trees again. Well, the agronomy team, when they did it in secret, because they were worried that people would there'd be huge backlash. So the club's leaders, the grounds chairman, the board, the superintendent, the head pro, they all endorsed the program. But the maintenance staffers would have to cut down these trees and cover up the evidence in the early hours of the morning before members started playing their rounds. And then some caddies started to notice, and there were threats of petitions and lawsuits. But then over the years, they finally start realizing how much better it looks, and how much the turf conditions improve, and really gets back to that original vision by Henry Fones and subsequently William, to have this sort of taking the links principle, the Scottish principle, and just dropping it in the middle of Pennsylvania farmland. And now Gil Hance most recently did a renovation, and it's meant to kind of restore it to that sort of look and feel.
And Bob Ford, I was watching this documentary, of course, a famous club professional over there at Oakmont. He was staying, I guess he had lived on the 18th hole, and he was telling the story at the middle of the night, around 4 a.m. They heard this loud bang, and we stepped outside and noticed it was a tree, and by the morning it was gone. So they got really good at removing trees. But to your original just stat about how they were the beautification aspect of planting trees, that was just during that time, that was a incentive by a lot of the country to plant trees. So during that time period, it wasn't unusual to see many golf courses, many parks planting trees for the beautification of America. So that was not unusual. And then I think what you found was that over the course of the years, that from an agronomy standpoint, grass really struggled to grow. There was trees that were overhanging these bunkers on a lot of fairway bunker shots. So you would be sitting there on a 100-yard shot with an overhanging tree. And I think Bob Ford, he was one that was he was a big advocate of taking these trees down, mainly because you didn't have a shot. The only shot that you had was to play it back out in the fairway, which is not unusual at Oakmont. But there was a strategic standpoint, an agronomy reason why these trees need to get removed. And once they finally went through it with that project, all the way to 2016, when we got on property as a player, that was the big storyline was, holy crap, this place literally does not have a tree on it. And that was a big conversation, whether it was right or wrong. Back in 16,
Mm-hmm.
there was still a lot of debate whether that was the right or wrong thing to do.
And so then take us into the week. You know, you're on property. It's classic. Who you playing practice rounds with? What is it? And here's another question I'm curious to pick your brain on is you've played many golf courses in your lifetime, and many of which are very difficult. Where does this rank amongst, you know, is it top 5 most difficult, top 3? Is it the most difficult golf course you've ever played?
It's annoyingly hard.
Okay.
It's just going to beat you up like a really good boxer. You know, you're not going to get knocked out in the first round, but if you go 12 rounds, you just get hit and hit and hit, and you make the easiest bogeys. And it doesn't have the risk reward quite as much as, let's say, TPC Sawgrass, where there's penalty areas that have big numbers working. Everything is really right in front of you. The fairways have, you know, they're not the shortest or the most narrow fairways in the world, but you know what happens when you hit it in either the fairway bunkers or the 5-inch rough. And then when you get out of play, now you're literally just fighting for par. But when you find the fairways, it's still not easy to make birdies. So that's the challenge is when you do miss fairways is how can you make pars? And when you hit fairways, can you hit it close enough to make birdies? And that was the challenge. I did my best to try to figure it out. And the practice rounds that week, I had 2 S words during the practice rounds.
Oh, okay.
That maybe had a little early extension going on in the golf swing. I'm not quite certain, but 2 S words in the practice rounds. And played with, I played with Rory, JT, and Jordan, I think, one of the days. And we played, was that
S-word day, or was that not S-word day?
I know I played with Jordan one day, but I don't think he was playing that day because I think maybe Ricky was playing with us.
Okay.
And I just remember I had to put $500 in Rory's locker because we lost the bet. And I can't remember who was on my team. Maybe it was JT and I playing Rory and somebody. That actually is starting to sound right. I think it was JT and I played Rory and maybe Ricky. That kind of starting to sound right.
We need to do an oral history on this round, and especially I love to get Rory's perspective. I'd love to ask Rory this week what he remembers about your S word in the 2016 practice round at Oakmont.
It just feels so wrong. Like it's like the rich get richer. When I was like, I gotta go get $500. I'm still, it's like second year on tour. It's not like 500 is still a lot of money to me at the time. And on the tee, they're like, I just want to play for 500. I was like, 500 what? Pesos?
500 warm handshakes.
And now I'm like, God, now I got to get dialed in here. I thought we'd just play for, a couple $100. And definitely lost. I think it was like on 18. I think Rory maybe made a putt. But it was a good week of prep besides just the rain. It was a short week.
Was rainy that week too? Early in the week?
Yeah. It got so much rain. And then the tournament, it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what I had forgotten was how difficult the ends of each nines are when you go back and look at not only my scorecard, but when you go back and just look at other players' scorecards and just the overall stats of how the course plays. I played 15 through 18 in 2 rounds, 7 over par with no double bogeys. So
wow,
all I did was make bogeys on 15 through 18 and 1 par.
So I'm curious on the mechanics of making an easy bogey, and I hope I'm quoting this correctly or referencing this correctly, but I think it was Jeff Ogilvy on the Friday Golf Preview video that was talking about because the land shapes and the way that it does and the sort of this gentle slope that wasn't really ever flattened, that you end up having to find a lot of aiming points, both in terms of, hitting tee shots into fairways, but also approaching greens where you have to
especially
go
when it's firm,
much further left or right of your intended target, because that ball is going to land a certain spot. And then when the greens are running, as they're advertised this week, around a 14 on the stip meter, that ball is going to release a ton. So is that, when you're talking about making an easy bogey, is that sort of the mechanics of it, of just, having to kind of guess on a landing spot more so than you might normally need to? And then it either you leave it short or it's long, and there just aren't any easy two putts out there?
It's just a beautiful mix. Not every hole has these like big sloping fairways to where it's, you're landing it on a left to right or right to left slope. There's only a few that really come to mind. Like the 12th hole is the best example. Probably one of my favorite par fives in the world. The 12th hole has a downhill left to right slope, hard to hold that fairway. But many of the fairways are, not necessarily have a ton of slope one way or another. I think of the third hole, for instance, one with the church pews on the left. That was a fairly flat fairway that works into an upslope. But if you miss that fairway, if you hit it in the church pews, you're fighting for a par. But then if you miss in that right rough, depending on the lie, it was going to be difficult to hold a green that's pitched way up on the green. The whole golf course is a perfect, beautiful mix of architecture and strategy, and just testing the players to hit all of their clubs in their bag. We're talking long par threes. We're talking par fives that you can get 2 and 2. Only a couple being a par 70, but then stretch back at 16 now that has some length. That's a par 3 that I remember hitting 4-iron into, that players probably will be hitting long iron into come this week. But 18, or the 8th hole, like you said earlier, is a 288-yard par 3 that can play up to 300. So we're talking about a mix of just, just strategy that makes the players make a decision based off of where the hole location is and what they want to do off the tee. Probably my favorite hole in the golf course is the second hole, where there was talks during the golf tournament in 16 of, hey, can you push it all the way up there and drive this green? And we were trying it out during the practice rounds. And I remember thinking that, okay, if you got maybe a helping wind here, it would be a good try to push it all the way up there. But it's still not easy to do because you got out of bounds right. You have this ditch left of the fairway that it's going to swallow up golf balls. And the smart play would be to hit like a long iron and then just a wedge onto the green. But now the second green has I think, it's just an incredible shape where it's got this finger over there on the left. It's pitched back to front, and you're trying to control spin, but also worried about that first bounce, not that one bouncing over the green, especially to that left flag. So there's holes like that, and I think the restoration project that Gil Hance did, which by the way, let's talk briefly about this, because how often do you see a U.S. Open venue 2 years before they host an event go through a full-on restoration project where they're ripping up the entire green surfaces and bunkers on the golf course? I mean, when in history has this happened other than Augusta National, which happens every single year where they change greens? Like, it's just very unusual. A lot of times you like to do that way in advance of a tournament.
Yeah, and to that point, and I think this is from Jeff Shackelford's Quadrilateral newsletter, of just the timing of that. So after hosting the 2021 USAM, they bring in Gil to start in 2023, and instead of just a pure restoration, Gil kind of looked at each individual hole's best case scenario or peak between 1903 and 1947, when at least one of those two phones, Henry William, was alive and in control of the way they wanted the course to play. And so this specific project, there was 24,000 square feet of green expansions without rebuilding any greens, including an additional 2,300 square feet on the third green, 33,000. Do I have that right? Yeah, 33,000 square feet of bunker renovations, including expansion of the infamous church pew bunker at number 3, 2 acres of fairway expansion, 250 yards of additional tees, and then some modifications to discourage players from playing down neighboring fairways, reduction of bunker face swelling around greens that reduce visibility and hole location possibilities, realignment of fairway contours to better snake through bunker complexes instead of sticking to a formulaic width, and repositioning of select bunkers, which had been added incongruously or replaced with little strategic purpose. Again, that's via Jeff Shackelford at the Quadrilateral. Smylie, when you hear that list of sort of task items that Gil was working on to kind of punch up Oakmont relative to what you played in 2016, how do you think it plays differently this year in 2025?
Not too much different. I think the big key is that the slopes that are currently now, the steep slopes that are just on the front side of all these bunkers, especially the fairway bunkers, talking to some players, they feel like they're a little bit steeper. And the interesting part is, will the bunkers be super flat when we're here this week, or would they have a little bit of a curvature to it where the ball might try to settle more towards the middle where the players have a chance to get out? But every bunker was rebuilt on the property, which is an extraordinary amount of time and effort. I can imagine this agronomy team probably has been put through the ringer, especially with knowing it's not easy to grow out 5-inch rough and keep the playing surfaces playing as good as they have. But I thought it was interesting too. The USAM, the last time they had it there, the first hole, players were hitting it down the ninth because that first tee shot really is very difficult to hit that fairway. Got out of bounds right. And just right from the get go, you got to hit a shot, and so all these young dudes were just bombing it over on 9. I think that's kind of been taken out. I don't know what they added over there. I'd have to go see it, but yeah, that's one change that's kind of been made, and then a new irrigation system. So that's definitely helpful to have, especially this week, knowing that inside the ropes, you have to imagine the playing surfaces are not going to get too swampy.
Yeah, and just to kind of button up just the full picture of the course, so as mentioned, it is a par 70. It'll play 7,372 yards this week. The course rating, for those of you at home, you're trying to figure out, what would I shoot here? Course rating 78.4 with a slope of 150 for a par 70. So that's fun. Sounds like a lot of fun. And then to your point about it being all in front of you, 168 bunkers on the course, 0 water features. The grasses, greens are perennial poana. The tees, fairways, and approaches a mix of perennial po and bent grass, and then of course that rough, the 5-inch rough, the mix of the Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass, po. We saw Johnny Vegas dropping balls in that this past week. Looks very nasty. And this is interesting too, because as a guy who has dealt with some wrist things, balls in that rough can be fun to try to get out of some of those gnarly lies in there with if you're worried about a wrist.
And what Gil Hanse too, I think he's done a beautiful job of restoring many famous golf courses. And I don't know where they find these aerial photos, if they're just in the clubhouse library, but he's got a great
historian there apparently.
Well, I'm sure they do. And so Gil, of course, found the aerial photos of the phone's 1920, 1930 images of where the bunkers were and what they look like in today's day and age, back in 2023 when he was brought on to check out the project. And that was one of the things that he wanted to get back to is look at where some of the best position bunkers were in all the different decades of how this golf course has changed, and try to get more back to the original back in the 20s and the 30s, which is not surprising. It's kind of what many of these famous golf courses are doing now. And so I think that's what Gil did a really great job of. And then the other part too, and I remember this in 2016, the edges of the greens, because of all the sand residue from guys hitting bunker shots onto the corners of the greens, they were creating, I'm not sure if it's just buildup, but it would cause the green surfaces to raise. Organic matter, sure. And so that's one big part of the project, was to level that out a little bit, flatten it out, and then also add a little bit to some of those corners to give you maybe a couple more hole locations. But for the most part, the greens are going to look very similar. There's only one that really has a bit of a different lengthening in its shape, and that's the 13th, the par 3. Beautiful little mid iron up the hill. But I think a couple more hole locations on that hole. And I think the guys will find when they get into the bunkers around the greens that maybe that first bounce won't be quite as sharp as it used to be. You were just landing it just on these down slopes, man, when you get short-sighted. So I think that added aspect, but it's not like in another golf course where when the golf ball's in the air. And I think a lot of players are like, please get in the bunker, to where you could spin it.
Yeah.
I think the bunkers are going to be, just as hard at times than the rough, but it's going to be pot luck when you get in the rough this week.
Hey, just imagine if they were furrowed. I'd be add a few shots on that. Yeah, there's a great aerial of the 9th green, which is also includes a practice putting green as well. 23,000 square feet. I've never played Oakmont. I'm excited to get on property and check it out, just because it just seems like such a classic, but also one that, to your point, like it's the only. There are no other phones courses. It's just this one, and we could take a look at this and see how it's progressed over the years with help people like Gil Hans, and it's pretty cool.
Have you heard the story of the beginning when phones was they had designed the golf course, but they wanted it to be the most challenging course, like you mentioned earlier, and so there would be bunkers that would pop up overnight when he'd be playing with a good player, and they hit into a spot where he's like, well, I think we're going to need to put a bunker there because I want to make sure he's challenged a little bit more. So that was like a cool aspect of this club, is that they were always trying to make it play more difficult. And I just think it's fascinating. And I think they really probably think they have the best version of Oakmont that they've ever had to this point. And from an agronomy standpoint, probably never in a better spot. They have the technology, and Gil is, well renowned for all of his great work. So I'm really excited to see it all and remind myself of how hard this golf course was, and be proud that I shot 13 over.
That's right.
That's something to hang my hat on. I think I'm gonna be proud of that when I get there.
No one's taking that birdie at 8 on Friday. People forget the last time you walked off the 8th hole at Oakmont, you circled a 2 on the scorecard. So
I only had one double.
Yeah,
just made so many easy bogeys.
Well, and it's funny, just to go back to what you're saying about the bunkers, is that was the legacy of the course. Henry was the father who kind of opened this thing up. It was William who, in the years after, did the most tinkering. He was like the bunker addict. Like, he created the church pews. He was just like, let's start throwing bunkers in there. And also an accomplished player. So that story rings true of like, he should be able to hit that there. Let's put another bunker in. So it's obviously one of the most challenging courses by all accounts in the United States, and as far as a major championship venue. So we hopefully get a little drying out this week and give it a real test for these guys, get a little firm and fast, because it'll be interesting to see what the number is, if indeed that is the case. So Smylie, just to kind of wrap up a little bit, got a few from over at Live Golf. And I think the best way to segue over here is some video of our 2016 champion at Oakmont, Dustin Johnson. And this is the reason why this is fun. I want to show you this little video because it connects back to something we recently did on our show. I'm just going to show you this little greenside bunker shot he hit. That's a 4-iron, I believe, in his hand. Hits it right in the face and just top spins out of there. And I'm watching this highlight, and I'm saying to myself, that looks a lot like the VJ Singh action at number 5 at Augusta National that Jason Duffner just told us about.
Well, I mean, kind of. I mean,
we're talking about
a fairway bunker versus a greenside bunker.
But hitting a long iron into a bunker face, the top spin it out of there. I thought that was
the basic spin of the golf ball is correct, but no, very different shots.
Well, yes, and I'm sure. I mean, I would pay a gross sum of money to get video of VJ doing this on the 5th at Augusta National. Here's the prompt I have for you. Just with that story, with watching this video, what's the most creative thing you've ever seen someone do on a golf course and in a pro tournament?
Well, I just think about the road hole. Probably be the one that comes to mind, just when players have hit the shot into the wall at 17 and then it comes back and they hit it on the green. I haven't seen it live, but that's probably the most creative shot that I would think of. I don't think I've ever seen like a controlled skip across the lake. Okay. That would be very creative if we're thinking about just how can we play something so risky and aggressive to not lay up and instead try to skip something across a lake. I don't know when a scenario would ever become available to try, but that would be something, but nothing really, I don't know.
Nothing like you never saw someone take on a shot, or, I mean, we're talking about, you played a lot of rounds with Jordan Spieth. Surely something comes to mind of just, I can't believe he's trying to pull off this thing and wow, he actually did it.
Well, a lot of these things aren't explainable because you can't ever really truly see the windows. I know I've hit it in a window the size of an acorn that nobody else has seen, but I did it. I would say that would be it, but you can't ever really explain it. I've definitely hit shots purposely trying to land something on a cart path though, that like with a pitch shot or something.
Yeah.
I've tried shots like that, knowing that if I can land on the path, skip on the downslope and get onto the green or something like that. I've played that in competition, but no, that was a cool shot DJ hit. I definitely probably would have tried to attempt the same thing because probably couldn't have spun it from there.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it didn't really even occur to me that was a possibility prior to hearing Jason tell that story about VJ and then seeing a version of that in action where it just makes you think about a different type of shot. If I'm on the downslope in the front of a bunker and it's greenside, I mean, there's no chance I'm going to be able to spin it or stop it. If I just smash it right in the face and it top spins the right amount, the outcome probably is better. So creative stuff there.
Who won the tournament?
Where's the current update? Because I don't think it's over right now. And I have another one for you. Yeah, let's see. The current update is Graham McDowell leading the tournament at 13 under.
G-Mac,
round 3
let's go.
In progress. Just to shot off that lead tied for second, Bryson DeChambeau at 12 under. And here's what we need to talk about Bryson is he has a new set of irons in the bag this week. He's moved from the Avoda irons that were the original roll bulge, made their debut with great fanfare at the Masters 2 years ago. Now his partner LA Golf has built him a set of roll bulge irons, and they have a different type of weight that is further out on the toe to kind of take away that dramatic right to left miss that he has. He noted at the PGA that he was working on something. He had something and a lot of people speculated that maybe it was the golf ball, but it looks like maybe these irons are the thing that he was alluding to that he was going to have in play at the U.S. Open, and they're in the bag this week, and it looks good. If Bryson figures out his distance control, the dispersion on those, feels like he's another great shout to win U.S. Opens for back-to-back years.
He's gonna be in the thick of the things with this tournament. Just would be shocking if he didn't. He just drives it too straight. With that crank driver, which by the way,
he's out of the crank now.
He's out of the crank.
That's what because he's like all in on. He's all in on LA Golf now.
Oh, I thought you were just talking about his irons. Did you say he switched into a driver too?
They built the new driver for him. My bad. They have the full. I think he's going fully in that direction. Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Because he was hitting that other driver so good, right?
I think my guess is that, and again, this is not sourced from anyone, but it's just effectively that LA Golf as his partner on equipment and stuff is just taken all of his best performing equipment and either made replicas of that or tried to make a better version of it. And that's why I'm curious to see on these irons. I know he liked the tech behind the Avoda roll bulge deals, but if LA Golf can build something that achieves that and take away the severity of his most common miss, I mean, that's a good equipment formula to me, it seems.
Yeah, definitely so. And I'm just sitting here kind of looking at past U.S. Open winners at Oakmont and just some basic statistics that can maybe answer the question a little bit here with Bryson DeChambeau, which is what are the most important things to win at this golf tournament? And we can look back at Angel Cabrera in 2007 and Dustin Johnson in 2016. Angel Cabrera was second in driving distance at 310 in 2007, and Dustin Johnson was first in driving distance and for 317 yards. Dustin Johnson was first in greens and regulation, 76%, 49th in putting. And then also, let's see, 65% third in green and regulation for Angel Cabrera and 28th in putting. So the formula to me with those two guys, which is hit it really long off the tee, find a way to putt for birdie, and just two putt, and then take your birdies when you can get them. And if we think about, let's see, what player kind of fits that category right now? Bryson.
It's a formula that suits him. We saw him U.S. Open test last year that was pretty demanding at Pinehurst. Obviously came out narrowly escaped there at the end, had some help from Rory, but wins that tournament. I also have to issue a correction. You are correct. The crank is still in his bag as of the PGA Championship.
Okay.
I thought they'd made a big deal. It's hard these days trying to keep up with who's switching into what driver, but there's a big deal made about the new LA Golf head that was designed specifically for Bryson. But at least at Quail Hollow, who's still in that crank Formula Fire Pro 5-degree driver. I can't imagine hitting a 5-degree driver. Oh, and he has it turned down to 4 degrees.
Jeez, Louise.
I mean, it's a putter. It's a big putter.
I need all the loft I can get, pro.
Yeah, same here. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, and I'd assume that if he played well this week, there's no reason that he wouldn't keep that in the bag. Just made a birdie. Now he's at 13 under at time of recording. There's no reason he wouldn't keep these irons in the bag at Oakmont. So we'll see. We will see.
I think Bryson is definitely going to be in contention, has a really good chance of winning. He's definitely my favorite from the LIV crowd of guys. And I like a lot of guys from LIV this week, to be honest. I think they're going to play well. I think Joaquin Niemann's going to have a good week. I believe that Tyrrell Hatton is going to have a good week. So we might be pretty LIV heady on our lineup this week.
Well, the next time you hear from us, we'll be breaking down all of their chances at Oakmont amongst the rest of the field. Scotty Scheffler entering as the large favorite, which is not a shocker. But you know, we'll see where that ends up shaking out as we start making our one and done picks, start putting together our DFS lineups. So yeah, and the next time you hear from us, we will be in Pittsburgh, I believe. We will. I got a long drive in the Prius tomorrow.
There you
go. that thing's racked up some miles, so we're just gonna keep it rolling. But yeah, big thanks to our friends at Ahead, at Shipsticks, at DraftKings for presenting today's episode. We're excited to dig into some U.S. Open preview next time we talk to you. And Smylie, what do you any final thoughts of the people as we head into the third major of the season?
Final thoughts. I'll have my final thoughts on the golf tournament come our episode that's going to drop before the U.S. Open. But a thought that's away from that is shout out to, did North Carolina make it through? Did they make it through? Did Arizona do it?
Arizona did it.
No, they didn't.
I've had it up here this entire episode, and I almost wore my North Carolina hat on the show. I'm so glad I didn't.
They were leading like 3-1, right?
They were up 3-1. And then I believe it's been a lot's been happening while we've been recording. I think Arizona had a 3-run inning and went up 4-3. And just moments ago, Arizona clinched it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to bring that up.
Yeah,
not
real
even knowing.
Downer, bud. Yeah, I mean, our own super regional at home. It looks like everyone's left the Boshamer Stadium except there's like one dude who's sitting out by himself with a towel over his head in the middle of the bleachers in left field. And wow. I kind of feel like that. I
thought North Carolina was going to be a tough out in Omaha. Yeah. So LSU's got one more win today. We play at 4, hoping we get past the Mountaineers and clinch our way to Omaha. That would be sick. So. That's my final thought is Gould Tigers.
My final thought is I miss Pants Honeycutt.
Hey, it's officially football season. Congrats.
It's football season. Let's go. We are a football school once again. That's all we got for you. We appreciate you watching and listening. We'll talk to you next week from Oakmont. See you then.
You know, I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our local fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the